Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is G. You're watching Allastrology. We have a full moon coming up. Yes, the Gemini full moon. And I have some notes here and I have a chart. So this will be the Gemini full moon deep dive, right? We're going to put the chart on the screen. We're going to go through it together. And we're going to look at some of the other things, other planets, other players, as I like to say, so that we can see the overall setup. And here I am. You can see my little thing, my cursor thing, right? I made a figure 8 over there. Yep, that's me. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to look at the date. So we go to the left-hand side of the chart, December full moon, right? And we see that it is the 7th of December. Yeah. The 7th of December, 10:06 p.m. Okay, so now full moons are when the sun is at one end and the moon is at the other end. So we know that right off the top. So that's what we're looking for. The sun is in the sign of Sagittarius in the month of December. Okay. So we know Sagittarius. Yep. There's the Sagittarius symbol right there. And then if we know what the sun looks like, yep, it's right there. The sun is that circle with the dot in the middle. And so these symbols, just for anybody who's new to astrology, or maybe no one's ever just said it, but these symbols are all the same. There's no language involved. It's symbols. The point is, it's a universal language. That makes sense. Doesn't matter what language you speak, the sun is the sun. Astrologically, that's always going to be the sun. Doesn't matter what language you speak. Okay. So that's good to know because, it kind of just gives you a little bit more of a context in understanding why astrologers use some of the wording that they use. Sometimes I've heard people accuse astrology of being very generalized. And so there's a reason behind the generalizations because we're covering a span of people, a generation of people sometimes, generalized generation. And so everybody has free will, right? And everybody lives in a different place. Everyone speaks different languages, different cultures, right? There's a lot involved. So you may hear the generalities being spoken about and just understand it's not to deceive. It's to not to exclude anybody. It's to include everybody and to say, hey, this is, if you're interested in this is, you're included. If you're interested, you're included. All right. So there's the sun at 1601, right? How do I know that? 16. See that right there? 16 and see the little degree sign next to it? Yeah. Little degree sign is like right there, 16 degrees. And then there's the 01. So that reads 16 degrees and 1 minute. Right. The big number is the degree and the little number is the minute. All right. So now if we know that our opposite moon is going to be in the sign that's exactly Sag, the sign that's exactly opposing Sagittarius. Hold on a minute. The internet's telling me it's not working. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, I hate to even speak and show this if it's not working. And I know it's freaking StreamYard because it's StreamYard's hookup. It's not the internet on the laptop. The internet on the laptop is very strong. Anyway. So the sun's on one end, the moon's on the other. What's opposite of Gemini? I'm sorry. I just gave the answer. What's opposite of Sagittarius? Gemini. Right. So we'll go to the opposite and we'll take a look, right? Here's Sag. Let's go to the opposite of Sag. And what do we have here? Opposite of Sagittarius. Bam. Gemini energy. And there's the moon, right? Moon at 16 degrees and 1 minute. And now you know how to read that, right? Yeah. You know how to read that all by yourself. But look, can you read the degree for Mars? Mars is the sign that's right next to the moon. So yes, this is a big deal. It is part of this full moon. So you know how to read this, right? Yeah, Mars is in a red number too. Do you know what that means? Yes, you do. If you've been following the videos, if you've been half awake during the videos, you'll remember that the red numbers mean that a planet is moving backwards. It's retrograding. And so that's why Mars's numbers are red. Mars is retrograding. And so, yeah, if you're listening, put in the comments, write that out for me, Mars. How do you read that? How do you read Mars's numbers, right? What degrees is Mars at? And I want the minutes too, right? Right, I just gave you 2 hints. All right, so we've got the moon at 1601 and we've got the sun at 1601. The moon is in Gemini, and that's how we know we have a Gemini full moon. Right. This was included in all the rising sign videos for the month of December. If you haven't watched yours, I'll include it below. I'll have the link down there. Go watch yours. That will help to give you more meaning as to how this will show up specifically in your life. Right. Now, I always like to run, since we already know where Mars is, it's right with that moon. Now, some moon keywords, family, home, the public. Yeah, the public in general. When we think of family, family is our, the people you were born, right? Your mom, your dad, family in general, people that you vibe with, because we have found out when we become adults, we can make others our family. We can choose our family, right? Yeah, we can choose who we want in the inner circle of what we'll call family. So the moon on a greater scale, other than being the small scale is my family that I was born into, the moon is also humanity, the big family, right? We're all connected, whether we want to be or not, we are. We can't escape that, right? The only way to escape that is to no longer be in that physical body, no longer be in the human physical body. But yes, the moon represents humanity, which is interesting because there's another sign in astrology that is kind of similar to that. And that's how astrology works. There's multiple things that mean multiple things. And so it can be confusing. But this video isn't about that. So I'm going to stay on track for you. Okay. Now, so the public or my family, the moon is also feminine energy typically, right? It's about nurturing. It's about feelings. It's emotions. The moon is history. It's history. Some say that the moon is really a mirror, that it reflects back to us, that it's a reflector, right? So typically when we think of full moons, right? Think of full moons. How many people, if you talk to police officers, paramedics, anybody who EMTs, anybody who's in that line of work of servicing the public, when there's an emergency, they will share tons of stories, typically where events occur if there is a full moon. And that is because it's a increase in the emotions typically, because the moon has a moon cycle that it goes through, right? And so when it gets to that full peak, that stage, it's at its highest peak. So normally your emotions are at their highest peak. So typically full moon energies bring that. The nice thing about having a full moon in the Gemini energy is Gemini is a little bit more logical. It's less about feelings and emotions. It's more rational and logical. It's about discussing and even debating and entertaining other thoughts and ideas. So it's not going to get so stuck or caught in its feelings if it comes across somebody or has a conversation and there's no if somebody doesn't just immediately grasp their idea or agree with their idea, I should say, it's not taken personally. It's like, well, this is what debating is all about: presenting different ideas, throwing things against the wall, seeing what sticks, and just kind of, sharing of information, right? Sharing of information. So that's one of the good things, the positive things about the full moon. The other thing is that Mars being at 1607, what I like about that is that Mars is technically kind of sort of trining Saturn energy, right? There we have Saturn at 20 degrees because it's actually moving direct now, right? You see Saturn's in black. And so Mars trining Saturn energy is a help. What about Libran energy? That's the other air sign, right? We have the part of fortune over there, which is at 11 degrees. So that can be beneficial. When we look around the chart, we want to look at Mercury and Venus, right? There she is. There's Venus at 27 degrees in Sag. So if anybody's listening who watches a lot of astrology videos, right? What else is at 27 degrees in Sag? You see that right there? Right. That's the galactic center. So Venus will be conjunct the galactic center. Now, normally when we have that sort of a conjunction, the galactic center itself is usually going to be big events. It's about somebody who's in power. The galactic center is a point. It's literally considered like the point of source for the galaxy, for this galaxy that we live in. So normally, anytime something is conjunct that, we hear something. And if it's in Sag, it could be political, it could have to do with the courtroom, it could have to do with the justice system, right? Freedoms of our body, that sort of thing. And I mentioned that because Venus is present. You see that? Venus energy. Venus is right there at 27. Yeah. And Venus is typically warm. It's feminine energy, right? Venus is about um, what I value, basically, what you're going to value. And so justice is going to be a big deal because you've got Sagittarius energy there. And freedoms. Freedoms will be big. So courtroom stuff, right? Freedoms of our bodies. And women, this is a big deal. We got Sagittarius energy and Venus together, conjunct. And Mercury is not far away. Look, see that? There's Mercury right next to Venus. Little purple fellow with the antenna. Let me move this one thing out of the way. Yeah, that's Mercury right there. I'll go like this. How about that? Yeah. So Mercury's purple and Mercury is information. Now, what's interesting is that likely even the day before, 2 days before, possibly even 3 days before, we could hear something big because Mercury will be close to 0 degrees of Capricorn here. Right. See, here Mercury's already at 151, which is 2 degrees. So just 1 or 2 days before, Mercury's at 0 degrees Capricorn, which is a world axis point. In Capricorn, it's government and business, right? Business and government. So for folks who've been following along with like U.S. politics and that whole, craziness that goes on, there might be something that we hear about. Okay. And so for those of you that follow along, yeah, you can probably figure out what we might be hearing about. Although there's a lot of different things happening. So we've got the sun in fire, right? The sun is in fire. There's a lot in fire. There's a lot. Sagittarius is a fire sign. All right. Now let's look over to find Jupiter. Jupiter is at the last degree of Pisces. And the last time Jupiter was at this last degree of Pisces, this would have been in the summer. Okay. It would have been the end of September, actually. Normally we hear something big, something that has to do, it could be politics, could be anybody who's in the spotlight on the stage, like actors, actresses. Hey, Taff, I didn't even see you. The Taffy's here. So think about that. It's Hollywood. It can be music too. So maybe people who are performers, and they'll just be in the news. Basically, they'll be in the news. And so there's a lot of different ways that people can show up in the news. When we think of politics or people who are performing, whether they're on the screen, the silver screen, or some of these politicians are performers. So a little bit of that in there, absolutely. And look at Eris. We haven't talked about Eris in a very long time, but here she is. When the pandemic began, we had Eris like at 23 degrees, 22, 23 degrees. And Eris is a strong feminine energy that is the best way to talk about Eris is it's a female energy or feminine energy that is angry for being ignored, whose voice never mattered, who didn't count, who was told you're never going to have a seat at the table because we don't need to hear what you have to say. It doesn't matter, right? So Eris is here at 24 degrees in fire. And when we look at fire and we look back to the Sagittarius energy, right? There's so much here. Hygeia is right there at 24 degrees. So that's a trine, which means it brings ease. Then we have Vulcan at 22 degrees too. There's a lot of supportive energy for Eris, a lot of supportive energy for Eris. So this is my body because it's Aries and the freedom of my body, Aries. And again, it's receiving a trine, beautiful trine from a lot of the Sagittarius energies, which it would have, the last week of November, the first week, like, even right now as I'm recording this video, supportive energies to the body, to feminine frequencies, basically feminine issues. There's support. It doesn't mean like stuff's just going to overnight occur, that you're going to be like, yes, finally, this is happening. But it's as though there's going to be something powerful because of all of the Sagittarius energy, because this is our judicial system, right? So yes, Supreme Court is involved in all this too, but so is, court cases, landmark court cases, stuff like that, right? Now, the full moon typically, when we get back over to here and look at Gemini, the full moon typically, you guys know from the videos, is a release and a letting go. Gemini energy tells us what we're releasing and letting go. Okay, so all those other planets is kind of what tells us the backstory of what could be happening, what sort of conversations are going on. Gemini energy is news. It's just like Mercury. When I showed you Mercury up there in Capricorn, it's news, it's information, it's sharing information. So Gemini is business. It's the merchants. It's online businesses, right? So it's social networks, social media. Think of like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. All these big tech giants, right? And just yeah, there's just a lot that's been going on there. And so because Mars is also here, there might be something interesting that occurs because Mars and the moon together will release, Mars tends to be malefic. So it's like, some say negative energy, because Mars is a very young, bold, and rash, and it's a fighter. It wants to do something to really just to be independent, to stand alone and to be recognized. But if it's hot-headed and it doesn't want to work together, it doesn't want to compromise. That's Mars. It doesn't want to compromise. So look, Mars and the moon, right? So you think Mars and compromise or lack of ability to compromise. Well, that's not going to work real well with social media stuff, right? That doesn't work real well when you're in a business that has to do with the public and your goal is to get as many advertisers, right? Because that would be Gemini energy as well. We're talking digital business, right? So this could also be like, online and doing things. There's a lot of different ways you can mess around, like what's that one, Robinhood. There's a lot of different apps you could use to, whether it's stocks or crypto, or I should say Bitcoin now, because crypto is taking a big hit, or at least not all of it, but many of the cryptos have taken some major hits. But yeah, it's digital. It's the digital realm. And so that would also be like digital neighbors, right? People who you consider friends because you're online friends, right? Everybody knows that, right? There's the Facebook friends, there's the YouTube friends, there's there's like Snapchat, there's like all these other things that I'm not on, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Put some in the comments below and tell me, what other social sites are you on? And what do you think this is gonna mean? Because look at all this. Just look at all this. Yeah, I have one hand on Tappy, so bear with me. The moon and Mars, look at that. It's pretty strong. It's really strong. So when we end something, it can also be something as simple as a completion energy. Now let's look and see what's squaring this. Is there anything squaring this? So because Gemini is a mutable sign, okay, it's mutable, we look for the other mutable signs. So the mutable signs that might square Gemini would be Virgo energy, okay? So a square to Virgo energy, squaring that would be something at 16 degrees. There's nothing here, right? This particular chart shows we have something at 15. So if you have something in your own chart at, your private chart, your birth chart, if you have something 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 in Virgo, then this will likely get squared this moon. This moon and Mars will square those things that you have, okay? Now look across from Virgo, and that's the other mutable, and that's Pisces. And look what we have. Partnerships. That's Juno right there I'm pointing at. Partnerships. Partnerships. That is squaring this moon. So what that tells me is this could be people who are in the spotlight, public figures, whether they're in Hollywood or whether they're musicians, politicians, whoever is in the spotlight. So I'm saying public figures. This is getting a difficult square from the moon and from Mars. You see that? Yeah, that's difficult. Okay. Now, the other thing here is that you got to remember the sun is over here at 16, right? So if the sun's at 16, if I slide this line across, that makes a difficult T-square. T-square just means these two lines create this 90-degree angle this way. And so we call that a T-square. You see that? Yeah. And so what we're doing right now is we're looking at transits. Okay. They call this transits. So yeah, Juno, partnerships with people. Now this could be spiritual people because it's religion. It's yeah, definitely politics. When I think of Pisces, Pisces can be a very warm, dreamy, artsy energy. So when we say, people who are actors or musicians, artsy, right? So think about that, right? Artsy. Squaring, getting angled in a very difficult way because the sun is also part of this. So the sun, then, if I draw out the sun line, see that? See that? Yeah, it's like a left triangle, right? Or whatever they call that. I forget. I'm sorry. My brain and all the stuff I used to know is gone. So this is the full moon setup. We've just taken a look at all the different energies. The nodes are at 13 degrees now in Taurus and Scorpio. So do you have something at 13 or near it within a 2-degree orb before and after? It's really 14. Or no, that's an 09. Yeah, that's an 09. So we're looking at 11, 12, 13, 14 degrees in Taurus or Scorpio, because then we just better understand, is this an additional layer, right? And so when we have all these additional meanings and things, you just kind of, the best way to do it is to really start writing all the things down. And it's almost like once you write all those keywords down, you can see a story, the story of your life, the story of what can be, the possibilities. You can actually see it. Like there will be a paragraph you'll see there and you'll be like, wow, this is actually interesting. I don't have all the verbs in here, but or the nouns, like who this is happening to, because it's hey, I got someone eating my wires, hold on. But it will absolutely tell you the story of what's going on in your life. So below the video, I'll have all the degrees for those of you who like to pay attention to the degrees in your chart. Again, if you don't know and you want to know, just comment below.